tabling and consideration of committee reports and government responses pursuant to Standing Order 62.4. Senator Lundy.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I present the second interim report of the Select Committee on the National Broadband Network and move that the report be printed.
The question is that that motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Against say no. I think the ayes have it. Senator Lundy.
Thanks. I move that the Senate take note of this report. And in doing so, I'd like to firstly acknowledge the staff of the Select Committee Secretariat for all of their efforts. The hard work and dedication required as this committee conducts its work across the country, I believe, is a genuine testament to their professionalism. I'd also like to thank my Senate colleagues on the committee for their cooperation and contributions. The Select Committee for the National Broadband Network no doubt will continue its work, but the necessity for an interim report, I think, encapsulates the work that the government has sought to do over the last little while. And this report is primarily lending itself to reflecting on a plethora of reports and reviews that the Abbott government has undertaken with respect to the National Broadband Network. I'll make 3 points and then reflect very briefly on the recommendations. 18 months into this government's term, the National Broadband Network company is still too uncertain to divulge how much the multi-technology mix, or MTM, will cost or how long it will take to build. The committee noted that the headline financial and deployment numbers that have been divulged to date by NBN Co and the government are outdated and indeed unreliable. The committee also found that NBN Co's strategic review was unreliable in the case of all examined scenarios. We know it was completed in just 5 weeks with no external oversight or external independent oversight, and the committee found that it contained financial manipulations and other irregularities. Mr Deputy President, over the past 12 months, these concerns have largely been borne out, with key NBN Co management distancing themselves from the report. The report also found that the cost-benefit analysis conducted by the government is deeply flawed and is not credible. I know my colleague, Senator Conroy, will extrapolate on these points, so let me conclude by making a couple of my own. I believe a network that relies in any way on Telstra's copper network is not and can never be a national broadband network. I've spent years in this place examining the state of Telstra's copper network previously, in fact many years ago now, and this work contributed to informing not only our policy to build a national broadband network based on fibre to the premises, but indeed an understanding that an overbuild was necessary because Telstra's copper will not stand the test of time. It has already been failing for years. To allow that part of the existing copper network to form part of a multi-technology mix is absolute folly. It ensures that the claimed national broadband network under this government will never be any such thing. It's a great, I think, travesty that is being borne out as we see not only the manipulations concerning the business and conduct of the National Broadband Network, as we've documented in a very detailed way in this report, but the fundamentals of a network that is no longer a fibre to the premises network, but back to the old way of the former Howard government in providing a multi-technology mix that will never deliver a ubiquitous or indeed universal high bandwidth network to Australians, and indeed will never deliver the commensurate economic and social benefits that would have put Australia ahead of the pack and allowed us to be the most substantial testbed network for high bandwidth connectivity across developed nations in the world. This is a great shame, but I commend this report to the Senate.
Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy President. And before I make some remarks on this particular report, Can I just acknowledge the work of Senator Lundy as the chair of this committee since I've been on the committee, since this government has, since the coalition came to government, and wish her all the best in her retirement from this place. Also to acknowledge the extraordinary hard work of the committee secretariat. This is not and has not been an easy committee to work for, so I'd just like to acknowledge the way that they have managed to manage a committee that has met on so many times. I begin to wonder whether I don't actually dream of the NBN committee during my sleep. But can I just say that there is the National Broadband Network concept is an amazing concept, and one that I think all Australians look forward to receiving in due course. But one of the comments that I have to make here is that we have, with this committee, to stop looking backwards and we've got to start looking forwards, Mr Deputy Chair. And I think that what we need to do, I'll get to that, Senator Conroy, and what we need to do is we need to start looking at how we can best roll this particular project out so that the people of Australia can benefit from what is a huge infrastructure project, a project that's going to cost Australian taxpayers billions and billions and billions of dollars, Mr Deputy Chairman, regardless, regardless of what the final multi-technology mix looks like. It's still going to be one of Australia's largest infrastructure projects ever. And it was quite interesting earlier on when Senator Ludwig was making comment, he actually referred to something looking like a dropped pie. And I think that one of the things that we do need to remember, Senator Conroy, through you, Mr Deputy Chair, was that what we inherited when we picked up this project coming into government probably resembled that dropped pie that Senator Ludwig was referring to. But I just think it is really appropriate and timely to put on the record that since November 2013, when this committee first established, and I point out that this is a committee that was established using the numbers in the Senate to actually end up with a select committee that doesn't reflect the government. It is a select committee that can meet without any government members being present, and did so on a number of occasions before government senators were appointed to it. But since November 2013, this committee has called 22 hearings. NBN executives have been demanded to be here before this committee for a total of not less than 272 hours. And if you consider what that is costing, not just in the hours of lost time that actually the attendance at these hearings cost, but also the amount of time that they spend travelling to and from these hearings, because of course they're not Canberra-based, the amount of lost productivity, their airfares, etc. This is an extraordinary amount of time in the space of about 15 months that any statutory or any government business enterprise should be expected to turn up time and time again, and often ask the same questions over and over and over again, despite the fact that the information that has been sought by some of the committee members, they already actually know the answer to the questions. They're just seeking often to just be mischievous about it all. So I just also, to put that in contrast, the joint NBN Select Committee, which was a committee of the previous Parliament, a committee of both houses of the Parliament, and a committee that actually reflected the makeup of this Parliament, had a combined total of 39 hours through 8 hearings. So I would like to put that on the record, just so that anybody who is seeking to have to hear or to read the contributions in relation to this particular report can understand that this committee has actually just degenerated into a witch hunt. And I really hope that maybe now that we've got this particular report out of the way, that we can settle down and we can actually start doing something really positive and doing the job of a select committee, and that is to monitor the activities of the rollout of this extraordinarily important project for Australia. So there is, I think, the underlying recommendation that I think that needs to come out of this particular interim report, which needs to set the agenda for going forward so that we can actually get some productive outcome from this committee, is that this committee needs to be a properly constituted committee preferably a joint standing committee because of the importance of it for not just the Senate but both houses of this parliament. And I think that the sooner that we get back to that and start actually focusing on the future rollout of this very important project, it would be the sooner the better. So I stand today to say that the report that's been put down by the NBN Select Committee is a report that I don't believe reflects the sentiments of everybody that attended nor the witnesses that gave evidence.
Senator Conroy.
Thank you. I do have to respond to some of the quite misleading claims that have just been put on the public record, quite misleading statements, because let's be very, very clear about this.
Senator Ruston on a point of order.
Yes, Mr Deputy President. Could I seek clarification through you, please, as to whether Senator Conroy is accusing me of misleading the Senate?
Well, I think he is. I think that's what he said. Senator Conroy, you have the call.
So the claims that this committee is meeting an extraordinary number of times...
Senator Ruston on a point of order?
I would seek that Senator Conroy withdraws his comment that I'm misleading the Senate.
Well, Senator Conroy can if he chooses to, but I'm not going to ask him to. But Senator Conroy can if he chooses to.
I withdraw.
Senator Conroy.
I wouldn't want to offend Senator Ruston. But let me be very clear. The reasons that so many meetings of this committee are needed is because not one single answer has been given to the committee on the simple fact of how much is Mr Malcolm Turnbull's dog of the network going to cost. Not one answer to that question, no matter how many times we ask it, no matter how many times we actually sit there and ask the simplest and straightforward questions. So we don't know how long it's going to take to build. We don't know what it's going to cost. We don't know what its revenue forecasts are. We don't know what its expenses of its teams are. Simply stonewalled every single time. At my last hearing, I think I commented that nearly 80% of the questions that I asked were taken on notice. Over a 5-hour hearing, 80% of the questions I asked were taken on notice. And it will come as no surprise to you, Mr Deputy President, that when we get these answers heavily doctored by Minister Turnbull's office, we will need to ask the same questions again, because these officers of NBN are not allowed to answer questions. We had the quite extraordinary example at the Senate estimates hearing, no, it was the previous committee hearing, when I asked a very straightforward and simple question to the expert about HFC technology, the newly hired one, $800 million a year. Simple question. The chief executive leaned over and said out loud, "Don't answer that question." Just leaned over. That blatant. So Mr Turnbull used to laugh and make jokes about the Kremlin when it came to NBN before. Well, the Kremlin is a beacon of transparency compared to the gulag at NBN quarters in North Korea that is being run by this government. After 18 months, the public of Australia do not know the cost of Mr Turnbull's dog of a network. Not a single cost, not a single revenue, not a single expense, not a single contract. In fact, it's so absurd now on this committee that when you ask them what is the cost of the contract with this company's major public company, they say, "We can't tell you." I say, "But this company have released this information to the stock exchange because it's material to them. Can I read you their press release to the stock exchange? Can you confirm this is the truth?" And they say, "We can't comment. We can't comment." So do not come in here and cry crocodile tears about the number of meetings, the number of hours, when these officers are directed by the Minister, directed by the Chair and directed by the CEO of NBN in front of the committee to refuse to answer a single question. And yes, you might find it's funny, but there are times when you won't always be in government. And you are breaching every possible informal rule that we have about how we deal with public servants. I won't tell you the cost of a contract, but it's released to the stock exchange. Or I can't comment on that. Is it true? I can't comment on that. So are they lying to the stock exchange? I can't comment about that. Abusing the committee processes of this chamber is a disgrace. The Minister stands condemned. The board of NBN stands condemned. And the executives of NBN stand condemned for treating the committee of this parliament, for treating the people of Australia with open and cold contempt. And then they laugh about it while they sit there in front of us. But I wanted to speak on the second interim report also, Mr. Deputy President. You will recall that the first interim report found that the NBN strategic review contained financial manipulations and other irregularities. That was no great surprise, as I talked about last time. It was put together by Minister Turnbull's 15-year yachting buddy. They actually jointly own a yacht in the Sydney Harbour. So you've got to put someone in place that's your best mate to give you the dodgy report to start with. But time has proven that the committee was right in its statements. NBN management have been crab walking away from this disgraceful, dodgy report prepared in 11 weeks, and they will not endorse it. They just cannot get away from it fast enough. That has, of course, left the Minister with a couple of problems. First, it was on the basis of this dodgy report that he used this fig leaf to say that fibre to the premise was too expensive to build. And second, he no longer has a platform to say that fibre to the premise is too expensive to build. So what does he do? What does he do? He has another review, his 7th review in 18 months. This minister is very fond of providing his mates with a steady stream of income on the taxpayer dime, but not so good at actually rolling out a network by 2016. The latest review makes wildly inflated estimates of the cost of fibre. Internationally, the estimates by NBN executives are a joke. People laugh openly when they see the fabrications and constructions used to inflate these numbers. But the Minister has engaged in some creative accounting here. Let's be very clear about this. First, he's decided, even though NBN uses an expense, this figure, internally inside NBN he's capitalised OPEX payments to Telstra for its ducts. So you take an expense that's an internal expense and you say, no, that's not good enough. The number's not high enough to back up the numbers we've claimed for the last 2 years. So we've got to actually take an expense from a different part of the accounts and capitalise it and add it to the number to try and bloat up the fibre to the premise costs. So $737 of the alleged cost of NBN's fibre to the premise rollout is entirely a dodgy fix from one set of the accounts in NBN to an external claim that it's part of the cost. No other country in the world, no other company in the world tries to pretend that those sort of OPEX expenses are part of the cost of an FTT build. None of them. Shame on you, Minister. Shame on the board of NBN for having to prop up its dodgy decisions with absolute fabricated numbers like this. Second, let's throw in some OPEX costs from internal labour. There's another $170. Oh my goodness, we still can't get the number high enough to justify wasting $30 billion of taxpayers' money on this dog. Let's just say all of those people sitting in that corner, all of those people and their wages, we're going to capitalise their costs for the purposes of NBN fibre to the premise rollout. Again, no other company in the world tries to account for its fibre to the premise costs like this. Totally and utterly a disgrace. Third, give in to delivery partners' ambit claims. Pay them whatever they want. A whole bunch of disputes arose during the course of the rollout, and this board, this management, rolled over and just paid out as much money as it could to deliberately inflate the cost of the rollout to date. They rolled over and paid out hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money just for the purpose of being able to pump up the numbers on fibre to the premise that was being rolled out. And then we haven't been able to finally get a number on that one. But then NBN is hiding it. Fourth, throw away. Actually direct officers inside NBN to stop rolling out cost savings. Actually stop rolling out cost savings. So that's what has gone on in the last 18 months. And time is almost up. I seek leave to continue my remarks.
Is leave granted? There being no objection, leave is granted. Senator